Hollowbrook Cemetery was not just a burial ground, it was a legend in its own right. Nestled on the outskirts of a small, quiet town, it stretched across acres of uneven land, dotted with weathered gravestones, crumbling mausoleums, and towering oak trees. By day, it exuded a strange kind of peace, the kind that made visitors feel as though they were walking through history. But by night, it transformed into something entirely different, a place where shadows seemed to move, whispers carried through the air, and the air itself felt heavy with secrets. Eric was new to the job. A broke college student, he had jumped at the opportunity to work as the cemetery's night watchman. The hours were long, but the pay was decent, and all he had to do was patrol the grounds and ensure no one trespassed. Simple enough, or so he thought. The first night. The first night was uneventful. Armed with a flashlight and a thermos of coffee, Eric roamed the cemetery's winding paths. The gravestones were eerie in the moonlight, their inscriptions barely legible, worn down by time. The wind rustled the leaves, and the occasional hoot of an owl broke the silence. Eric told himself it wasn't so bad. But on the second night, things began to change. At exactly 2:13 a.m., Eric heard it, a faint humming sound. It was melodic, almost soothing, yet it sent chills down his spine. He swung his flashlight in the direction of the sound, but there was nothing there. The humming stopped as abruptly as it had started. Probably just the wind, he muttered, though he didn't believe it. The woman in white. By the third night, Eric had grown more uneasy. The cemetery felt different, darker, colder. The wind seemed to carry whispers, faint and indistinct. He tried to ignore them, but they grew louder as the night went on. As he walked past a particularly old section of the cemetery, his flashlight beam caught something unusual. Standing near a tall, crumbling gravestone was a woman. She wore a flowing white dress, and her long hair cascaded down her back. "Ma'am?" Eric called out, his voice trembling slightly. "The cemetery is closed. You're not supposed to be here." The woman didn't respond. She stood perfectly still, her back to him. Eric took a hesitant step forward. "Ma'am, are you okay?" Slowly, the woman began to turn. As her face came into view, Eric froze. Her eyes were hollow, black voids, and her mouth stretched into an impossibly wide smile, revealing sharp, jagged teeth. Eric stumbled backward, his flashlight shaking in his hand. The woman let out a low, guttural laugh before vanishing into thin air. Eric didn't tell anyone about what he saw. He couldn't risk losing the job, but the next night, his unease turned into full-blown terror. As he patrolled the grounds, he noticed a crypt he hadn't seen before. Its iron gate was ajar, the lock broken. A faint red glow emanated from within. Against his better judgment, Eric stepped closer. The air grew colder with each step, and the whispers returned, louder and more distinct. They seemed to be coming from inside the crypt. He hesitated at the entrance, shining his flashlight into the darkness. The beam illuminated a stone coffin in the center of the crypt. As he watched, the lid began to slide open, slowly and with a grinding sound that echoed through the small space. A skeletal hand emerged, its fingers long and claw-like. The whispers turned into screams, and Eric turned and ran, his heart pounding in his chest. Eric sprinted through the cemetery, his flashlight beam bouncing wildly. Behind him, he could hear footsteps, slow, deliberate, and getting closer. He didn't dare look back. As he neared the gates, he felt something cold brush against his shoulder. He let out a scream and threw himself forward, stumbling onto the pavement outside the cemetery. When he finally turned around, there was nothing there. The gates were closed, and the cemetery was silent once more. Eric quit the job the next morning. He didn't care about the money anymore. Hollowbrook Cemetery had secrets, and it made sure no one stayed long enough to uncover them.